So welcome to Untangling Traditions. Today we'll be speaking with Keith Cantú, who is a PhD candidate at the University of California, Santa Barbara. So Keith is a student of South Asian religions who specialises in the early modern vernacular movements of yoga, tantra and alchemy, which have intersections with Sanskrit literature and esotericism. He's contributing a chapter towards the Alchemy Reader, which will be an output of the AyurYog Project. So welcome, Keith.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have translated an interesting chapter of the Rasāyanakhaṇḍa, which outlines an alchemy pilgrimage through a land of magical stones, plants, gods and goddesses, metals, mantras, creatures, and treasure hunting. So tell us about your work on this particular chapter.
Well, the chapter that I translated for the Alchemy Reader is from the circa 15th century Rasaratnākara, and specifically a khanda or part of the Rasaratnākara called, as you said, the Rasāyanakhaṇḍa. And this, there's some speculation as to whether the khandas initially circulated separately or, were later compiled together under this 5-part text known as Rasaratnākara. But this text that I'm translating is part of the 8th chapter, or forms the 8th chapter, or Upadesha, instruction of the Rasāyanakhaṇḍa. And it's just been a fascinating journey going through verse by verse, trying to figure out, what is being communicated in terms of these fascinating and fantastic instructions to the sādhaka or adept. And it's led me to a wide variety of historical literature, as well as trying to figure out the intersections of the text with more conventional, you could say, laboratory alchemical instructions.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. So how does this text connect with the temple, the main deity, and the mythology of Srisailam?
Srisailam, as a current temple pilgrimage site, is centered around the deity Mallikarjuna, who is a form of Shiva, and specifically one of the Jyotirlingas, or kind of shining lingas of Shiva. And even in our text, the first few verses open up with an understanding that Mallikarjuna, who is mentioned by name, I think is Mallinatha, the Jasmine Lord, as sort of the center of these various dvaras, or gates, or you could say even stations, because it's not clear if they're actually gates, that are equidistant, and then to the north and to the south and to the northwest and so on. But the central figure is always Mallikarjuna, just as the temple culture stands today. And so several authors have written on this. Rama Rao has written on it from an art historical perspective, Parabrahman Shastri, and more recently you have Peter Bishop mentioning Srisailam in the recension of the Skanda Purana, and even Elaine Fisher writing on it in terms of intersections with the Vira Maheshwaras, and these traditions that arose that tried to really understand what exactly the relationship of bhakti or devotion is with Shaivism. So our text is kind of coming at it not so much though from this devotional standpoint, as much as you have this world that is imbued with power, siddhis, that is sort of expressing itself in the bulbs and in the stones and in the, I think herbs is another word that's used. And all of these natural substances are what sort of the sādhaka is trying to go after and trying to cultivate and trying to understand by means of various rituals.
So does the sādhaka, the adept, just that person need to be an alchemist or an astrologist to undertake this particular pilgrimage?
Yeah, so the short answer is there needs to be some kind of preconceived knowledge of metallurgy and the ability of using mercury in conjunction with other metals to create various like balls or even pills of mercury. Gutika, I think, is the terminology. And there is also this understanding that the sadhaka should be conversant in the waxing and waning digits of the moon, as well as the titis, and also know how to calculate, when the full moon is and new moon is, which is more, I guess, less astrological and more common sense. But at the same time, there are these kind of presupposed knowledges that the text would expect the sadhaka to have. But then again, many of the other rituals are sort of more spontaneous that wouldn't require a preconceived knowledge of metallurgy or astrology. So it kind of depends. On the one hand, there are these preconceived expectations, but on the other hand, it seems like for some of the instructions, anyone could do it. If you have a shovel and you're able to dig in the ground, then you can acquire some kind of siddhi. Yeah.
So please describe one of these unusual rituals and some of the rewards gained by the sadhaka.
Well, some of the rites are described as like a group ritual. So there's one ritual where there's 3 adepts, and one has to ring the bell, and the other one has to fetch the water, and the other one has to bathe the idol of Ganta Siddheshvara, like the accomplished Lord of the Bell, in this bath. But one that really stands out to me is an individual rite where the sadhaka or adept is in the plantain forest, the Kadalivanam, and he encounters this nymph or yakshini, a tree nymph named Maukali, which could be translated as the raveness. And she says, "I'm hungry, I need some food." And the sadhaka is instructed to give her what she wants. And what she wants is rice with curd or a fruit or something else. And you feed her, and then she says, "Hold my son." And the sadhaka is instructed to hold this yakshi's son and carry him around and not let go, because if he lets go, then she will turn her destructive side on, and really who knows what happens. The text doesn't tell us, but we can assume that things won't end very well for the sadhaka. So there's a little bit of humor in there too. You can kind of sense that whoever, if the author was Nityanatha, who it's attributed to, then you can assume that there are also these domestic concerns of the sadhaka that kind of creep in, right? How am I going to take care of a child, holding it in my hands while I'm trying to dig for herbs that will grant me immortality,
Yeah, so you mentioned that one of the extraordinary siddhis gained by the sadhaka is the ability to transmute metal into gold. So can you explain how one achieves this?
So there are multiple instructions given. Some require a more or less simple task, such as digging in the ground and you come across a stone. Most of these stones are described as in the shape of a certain animal, like in the shape of a frog or the shape of a mouse or in the shape of a pigeon or something like that. And they are said to be able to transmute metals upon the touch. So the terminology used is Sparshaveda, which is also linked to Vedana, which is one of the alchemical samskaras in the wider literature that refers to transmutation of metals. So in some cases, the sadhaka can, by sprinkling something on the stone or by laying, in one case, it's clothes that have been soaked in menstrual blood. In another case, it's grinding the stone up and then consuming it with buttermilk and another, I forget what the other substance is. There are these instructions of what to do with the stone, what to lay upon it, what to consume it with, that then will create this power of transmutation. On the other hand, there are more technical instructions like rolling, like mixing mercury with iron and mica, and I believe some other substances in a metallic ball, and then attaching that to a bamboo post and reciting a mantra, and there is a transmutation of metals. So it seems like on the one hand, there is an attempt to at least give some lip service, maybe that's the right word, or some like a gesture towards the alchemical literature in the laboratory context, while at the same time, the real siddhi is coming not from the alchemists or the sādhakas' prowess as much as the siddhi that's already inherent in the substance or in the stone itself. Yeah.
So you may find that both philologists and yoga practitioners who are in need of finances at this time may be reading this particular text and attempting to acquire this siddhi of transmutation of gold. So thank you, Keith. It's been absolutely fascinating hearing about your work, and we look forward to the Alchemy Reader and your publication in it. So thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you so much, Jackie, for having me.